The Browns once again let it slip through their hands. This is more painful than a lot of people think. You look at this situation with the Cleveland Browns. Is the season over? Which players played the worst? We'll get the grades from John Costco, Pro Football Focus. We'll look ahead a little bit to the Cincinnati Bengals, and we'll try to figure out how the Browns right this ship. It'll all happen next on the next episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
G. Bush in the building. We got Jeff Lloyd is out right now. He is a little under the weather, but no fear. We still get to it. We still got John Costco, Pro Football Focus, to get into the grades, get into a lot of different things that we saw that were good, bad, and ugly from the loss yesterday to the Baltimore Ravens. We'll get into a lot of different things concerning this matchup. But before we get to that matchup, this episode is brought to you by Prediction Strike, the world's first sports stock market. You can now invest in professional athletes. Just like stocks, it's a lower risk alternative to sports betting, and athlete prices move based on performance and supply and demand. If you invest in Jalen Hurts in 1 year ago, guess what? Today, you'd be at 48.2%. Rashad Penny is up 154%. Kyle Pitts, and conversely, is down 41.12% and struggling to start the year. These are all type of things that we look for and all the things that you can do when you do Prediction Strike. It's basically looking to find out what players are trending, what players do, and how players go about that. All athletes benefit too and are entitled to a percentage of the marketplace. Unlike sports betting companies, 2.5 trade fees, the lowest in real money sports. You can invest in 4 sports, not just the NFL, but UFC, MLB, and NBA. Everyone knows you should be investing, but why not invest in what you actually know as a football fanatic? Download the Prediction Strike app and use the code word LOCKED for a free share when you sign up and make the first deposit of $20 or more. That's promo code LOCKED for a special one-time giveaway. Prediction Strike will choose one person who signs up with the code LOCKED and make a deposit to win 100 free random shares. That could be worth up to $3,000 if you get lucky and receive Josh Allen shares, for instance. Invest in what you know on Prediction Strike, the stock market for sports. Locked On Browns podcast. We are here with John Costco, Pro Football Focus. John, obviously, yesterday was a tough one. The Browns once again had an opportunity to win this game. The Browns all had an opportunity to get the game at the end of the game. They had an opportunity to line up for a field goal, and just like so many games that we talked about in the past, the Browns found a way to lose it. When you look at this game, and you look at the way the Browns lost that game, what to you stood out as one of the main turning points and why they weren't able to pull it together and get the win in the end?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of factors would led into that. I think when you have suboptimal play from your quarterback, that's going to really kind of hamper what you can do on offensively. Jacoby Brissett started off the season really well, but I think Jacoby Brissett's turning into what we know him to be throughout the rest of his career, which is a backup quarterback that's can maybe get you into good situations on the and certain spot plays, but you can't have him as a long-term starter, and we're seeing why. He had stripped in the pocket a couple of times. Just largely was not effective throwing the ball. For the most part, I know that he had 300, some odd yards or whatever, but you wouldn't look at that game and go, oh man, he was shredding the Ravens defense left and right. No, he wasn't. And then, he was making some critical mistakes at critical times. And I think for the Browns, when you have, you start getting into those, the scoring range, A couple weeks ago, you would have said that when you got to 4th and 3 at the inside the 20, Stefanski's going for that. And in this situation, he took the points and just kicked a field goal. And then, the Ravens were able to go down the field and kick a field goal as well. And so it's still a 10-point game, and it basically accomplished you nothing. So, maybe you go for it there in that situation to put, a touchdown up on the board. And then also when you get to midfield and you're lining up for a 56-yard field goal at 4th and 5, it's should you be going for that as well? It's like, at some points that, throughout the coaching tenure of Kevin Stefanski, he's been aggressive, which is great. And then, some situations where it's like he goes against like what the analytics say, and where it goes with like, hey, that's the football gut guy says to do. And in this game, that cost him the game, I would say, in those types of decision-making decisions. So obviously the defense was also not good from a run-stopping perspective. That, you obviously would say that they did a really good job limiting what they did from a pass game perspective, but defensively they still have issues in the run game, where the Ravens, running offense was just able to move it down the field pretty much at will all game long. And I think they still got to get things fixed there.
You talk about the run game and the run fits, and it's really nerve-wracking that a lot of fans seem to think that just because you didn't give up a lot of points, or there were some things that the defense played a little bit better, that that's winning football. I also thought the Ravens ran the ball at will. I thought the Browns didn't do a good enough job of pressuring in certain circumstances, especially 3rd and long. And I thought that the Browns did a couple little wrinkles defensively earlier. They brought blitzes. They brought MJ Emerson. They stood Clowney and Myles Garrett up. I saw an alignment with, had the eagle look with 3 techniques on each of the guards, try to stop the run. I thought they were creative, but after that initial wave of creativity, like on the offense end, they seemed to bog down and not be able to get off the field, especially when it came to stopping the run. When you look at the grades up front for the defensive line, and some of the outliers, who on the defense, had one of the poorer days in terms of one of the defensive standouts that the numbers bear out for Pro Football Focus?
Deion Jones was really bad. And I know that, people kind of thought maybe he'd come in here and kind of help right the ship when it comes to their run defense. But, it's like I said about Deion Jones, he's never been a good run defender in his career, and has been a plus coverage defender. And in a game where the Ravens basically did not throw it, I think they threw it 17 times, and then they ran it more than double that. You needed guys out there that could be able to stop the run. He had a 36.2 overall grade in this one, just a 39 run defense grade. So, he was actually better than Jacob Phillips, the guy that he's supposedly replacing, and who now is also hurt. So I just don't see teams stopping running the ball on the Browns at this point because of how bad the Browns are at stopping the run. As effective as the Browns run game is, they're less effective at stopping the run than the Browns run game is. So it's an issue. And, if you had that type of attack that you can just do all game long, why wouldn't you when you have, you can limit the effectiveness of like a Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney?
I think the Browns have been poor so far this season and just all the above. And it's very difficult to stop the run when your middle is so, susceptible. The defensive tackles, haven't done much. What are your thoughts up front? Who had the best grades up front, and who kind of disappointed in terms of stopping the run?
Yeah, Tommy Atogiai was actually pretty good in this game. So his grade was a 76.6. Run defense was 75.4. So he was actually doing a pretty good job. He had some nice plays. I know there's one at the goal line where he made a tackle for a short like a no gain, which is a big play. Granted, he was on there for 17 snaps, but on those 17 snaps, he was a plus player for them. Isaiah Thomas also did a pretty good job in sub packages for the Browns, and when they were needing to stop the run, because he was out there basically on 23 snaps, 21 of them are run plays, and he did a solid job. From a bad perspective, Jordan Elliott was bad again. And so was Jacob Phillips, but Jordan Elliott and also Alex Wright both were pretty poor in this game, stopping the run. Both of them had grades in the 50s, which, to be honest, is an improvement. Before over what they've shown before. So, I think what it still wasn't good enough from a run stopping perspective for a team. But like from a full team perspective, they had a grade of a 61 run defense, which is not good, but we're talking like the past few games have been in the 40s and 50s for them. So while there is improvement, like you mentioned early in the game, it still is not good enough. You need to be better than that. So Jordan Elliott, Alex Wright were not good, but Taven Bryan showed improvement in this one with a 62 run defense grade. So there's good and bad to take away from this.
We talked a little bit about the, some of the outliers here in this first segment. Let's switch to coaching. In the next segment, we will get to some of the coaching. We'll ask whether Kevin Stefanski has lost the locker room. Reports out there that guys are yelling and screaming at each other, blaming each other for, a lack of leadership. We'll ask John, has he really lost the locker room? We'll talk about the coaching staff coming up in the next break. But first, let's get to our folks at Blue Nile. Looking for a piece of jewelry to commemorate a special milestone, but still having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you with your memorable gift every budget. Shop stress-free with Blue Nile's 100% satisfaction guarantee. All Blue Nile orders are insured and shipped for free and discreet packaging. They also offer overnight shipping if you are in a rush. Make your moment sparkle with BlueNile.com. Go to BlueNile.com and use the code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BlueNile.com. Use the code word LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com. Code word locked on. We're back here, Locked On Browns podcast. G. Bush, I know you're missing it. My man Jeff is a little under the weather. We will get him back in, but the game don't stop for nobody, especially when you got to break down this film. And of course, the best in the game and the best of the business. John Costco's here talking about the Browns and Ravens. We talked about some of the outliers and guys that didn't do what they were supposed to and didn't really help the Browns win the game against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. But there has been some rumblings. A lot of people, Mary Kay Cabot. I talked to Jason Lloyd. A lot of those guys, while they were in the press conference last night, heard a lot of commotion, a lot of screaming, tempers flaring between teammates. And one of the things that you don't want to happen as an individual, right? Sometimes we want that to happen because guess what? Hey, that means at least you care, at least you're passionate. Or that could mean that your coaches lost the locker room, that they don't have faith in the game plan that they're putting together. John, you've seen Kevin Stefanski for the last 3 years. Do you believe that this might be an opportunity, or people may say, hey, has he lost the locker room? Are those guys not really dialed in to what he's selling?
So this is one thing, right? So we've known Kevin Stefanski for almost 3 years now. This is the third season, right? And I don't think we've ever seen emotion from him. Like he looks like an emotionless type coach on the sideline. He doesn't get, his highs, never gets too high, never gets too low, no matter what happens in the game, which, some people like, some people don't. I think it's a good thing that you have a coach that has a head on his shoulders that can maybe stay even keeled throughout the game to be able to make good decisions and stuff like that. I think it's a good trait. But so like when it's kind of like when you come up across an individual who's always like doesn't speak very much, very soft-spoken person, but then when that person does speak, it's like, oh, maybe he has something to say. Let's listen to him, right? Kind of the same thing where it's like Stefanski never maybe has a hot temper or gets angry with you. So if he has a situation where he comes into that locker room and maybe he starts chewing some people out, people go, oh, this is different. Let's maybe listen to that, right? Maybe they'll respond to that in some sort of positive way. So I don't think that, from a I don't think this is a big deal, right? I don't think it's probably going to get blown out of proportion and stuff like that to see, oh, there's yelling and stuff like that. Like these are grown men with like high testosterone that are going to be or they're competitive that want to win this game, right? Like they're upset. They know they're better than their 2-5 record. This is, we have our adjusted scores metric that we have at PFF. They should be 6-1 based on the way they've played versus the opponent. Like and like the situations of like luck, how the game flow went and stuff like that. They should be much better than that. But and I think if you have like a Deshaun Watson type quarterback, you probably are the inverse of what your record is right now. So I think having this happen is not a big deal. I think it should probably, hey, we need to maybe change a few things, and it gets some kind of fire started on them. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's actually I think it actually can be a really good thing for the team.
When I look at it, I think the yelling and back and forth, I wanted them to do on the sideline in public. So for me, I'm a guy that thinks that way. I don't think that necessarily getting into these confrontations is a bad thing. It just shows you that you want to play and you want to win. But I will say this, and we can kind of get into this is, I think that there's an issue sometimes when coaches start to lose, right? And when you start to lose, and you're losing in a way week after week that's different, and you're preaching a certain a certain offense, you're preaching how you guys need to go about your work to win football games, and when players put that much time and energy and effort into a game plan and they're not seeing the success, they're not seeing the production, there's something that can go wrong in terms of saying, hey, we doing all this work, we doing what you tell us to do, but we don't understand why the defense, and Joe Woods said it, prior to this game, they asked, what's wrong with the defense? Why aren't they far ahead, further ahead than what we would expect at this point? And he just says, I don't know, that I'm puzzled. I don't know. I said, that's a horrible answer. Like, do you think that players are starting to question whether or not the philosophy of the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator is working?
You'll always have a different answer to the media than what you would say in those meeting rooms. Like when it's like, well, why is your run defense so bad? It's like, well, I don't, you skate around the answer, right? Like we got to be, you kind of blame it as a whole team thing. I got to adjust a little bit better. You get in those meeting rooms, and you're just like, listen, Togi, you're getting blown off the ball 5-6 yards down the field. What are you doing here? Like that's what happens in those meetings versus like in the media. You're not going to call out your players, and that's a policy that probably, because you never hear it from these coaches that they're calling out individual players. Some coaches do it, like Bruce Arians does it obviously in Tampa Bay, but like there's some coaches that just don't do that. So I think I don't really read too much into like what's said in the media, right? So I think who knows what's being said in those behind closed meetings of team meetings of like, hey, this is you're 5 gaps out of your spot. You need to be in the A gap. What are you doing over there containing the edge? Like something like that. I mean, obviously it's probably not that bad, but like that's what's going on in those meetings. So I don't think that like the players think that the scheme isn't working from a defensive standpoint. Because just a year ago they were a top 5 defense, and I think they understand that they are severely lacking up the middle when it comes to this defense. And it's like you win with good talent in this league. Like scheme can only take you so far, and when you have one bad player on that defensive line, you can work around that. When you have 3 bad players on the defensive line, including guys that you're rotating in, plus bad linebacker play, plus bad safety play, I really don't know what you can do schematically to fix that. That's a GM issue that brought the players in.
Okay. So let me ask you this really quickly before we get to we'll transition and pivot and kind of talk about ways to improve this moving forward and whether or not the season is salvageable.
Got to talk about some offensive grades though, right?
Yes. We definitely got to get to some offensive grades. Let me ask you this question: do you believe Stefanski, Woods, and Prefer will all be back next year?
No. I mean, I would not expect Prefer to be back next year. That special teams unit is like consistently bad. I would just not. I just don't see them being all back. I think it's Stefanski's going to be back. I don't think that's like a question at all. Woods, I can see being back because he's been severely hampered this year by a lack of good players up the middle. Like not even just good players, just like average players. You just need average there. And part of it is like, hey, maybe you got to get a new defensive line coach to develop these guys better. That's part of it. But I think it's Woods. There's a question mark on it. Like we've seen good defense from him, right? We have not seen anything good from Mike Prefer through his 3 years. Like there's those are some basic issues that you should never be bad on special teams. Like those guys are supposed to be the most hungry guys on the team because they're fighting at that bottom of the roster, and really they're multiple pieces of clay. Like you should be able to, hey, this is your lane, stay in your lane type stuff. Like it's not that hard to be decently good at special teams. It just really isn't. You shouldn't be giving up 50-yard returns and stuff.
When we get back after break, we will get back into some offense, and we got to talk about the offense a little bit, and then we'll also talk about whether or not the season is salvageable. We're breaking down the Ravens game with John Costco of Pro Football Focus, and we'll get back to that right after these awesome words from Prize Picks, right? How does Prize Picks work? A lot of people ask about it all the time. Well, Prize Picks is really easy to do. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will go score more than or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on an entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offer projections on any sport that you watch. That includes NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, and women's college basketball, including soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, and so much more. When you take a look at this thing, you're not going against people. You're just going against what the projection is, and that's what makes Prize Picks so special. Download the Prize Pick app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Pick will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for instant deposit match up to $100. Back here, last segment on the Locked On Browns podcast. As always, when we do Monday, we break down that film work, we get to it, and we talk to John Costco, Pro Football Focus, breaking down these grades. We talked about the defense a little bit. Let's get into the offense. There's a couple places on the offensive line where there were some guys who, Poachich, by the way, I haven't noticed him at all. He's been a guy that just came in for Harris. In terms of the 2 guys, Poachich, and then I think it was Lodeholt was the guard, correct?
That's right.
And so 2 guys, that was the strength of your team. Wyatt Teller is out. How did those 2 guys perform up front with the running game and the passing game up front?
Well, Froholt had, I think it was mixed reviewed. So like run game, I thought he was pretty solid blocking there. Had some good blocks, had some missed blocks. I think for a guy that's a backup, pretty much did as expected there. But he was pretty poor in pass protection with a 32.4 grade in pass protection. Now, Posick has been, I'd say, pretty fine. From a I'll go back on Froholt here. He gave up 2 sacks in the game, so he was accounted for on 2 of the sacks that Jacoby had. So it was a pretty bad performance by him. But Pochik is, he didn't give up any sacks. He gave up just 1 pressure. And en route to a 73.4 grade for him in pass protection, and was pretty solid in the run game. Not great, but like 63.2 it's a perfectly fine game. For a center. It's not like he's not a guy that's going to be super good there, but he is like, when Teller's out there, he's the weakest link on the offensive line most weeks. But this week that wasn't the case. There was another guy that I have yet to mention who was the weakest link. And
Let's go ahead and get to him because to me, me and you have talked about this at length. I just don't even think Jedrick Wills, and that's the guy. I spoiled it. I was supposed to do a professional tease right there, but he played so bad to me that we just gonna get him out and open. To me, I always thought he should have been a guard, but then again, he doesn't run block good enough in order to be a guard. I thought he guys were running past him, and people, and maybe you can explain this to him. I didn't play D line. I was up there. What he was doing is a hold. That is a hold. You can't grab somebody's jersey, sling them down in front of a referee. And then he turns around lots of times. He gets beat and he just looks at the play. It's like this guy is a top 10 pick, and I think he's borderline teetering on saying that he's a bust because there's 3 people from that draft that are better than him. What did you have for your boy, Mr. Dark Shield himself, Jedrick Wills?
So he was 32.9 for the game, 36.7 in pass protection, 46 as a run blocker. Was just really bad. And if you watched him that game, so there's an ESPN stat that's out there that says he's been the best pass protector in the NFL at the offensive tackle position. It's like it's an absolute joke. I don't know how they come up with those metrics. He was like 98% win percentage at pass protection. It's like, what are you looking at that gives him that 98% win percentage as a pass blocker? We had him as like, I tweeted this out. It was like he's like 50 something. I can't remember it, but out of like 60 some eligible, he's like 52nd. It's a joke that he was for whatever reason ESPN has that stat out there. So he's been not good. Like the thing with him is like I don't know if I would say he's a bust, but he's a massive disappointment for the 10th overall pick, right? So I think you'd expect him to be an average offensive tackle at a minimum when you're picked at that number, and he's a below average offensive tackle. He's definitely not, I'd say, replacement level bad, but he's above that, but he's not much above that. And the problem, like you said, like he gets beat, he'll turn around and look at the guy and go, crap, what did I do? Instead of like trying to find work or like actively trying to make what you did wrong right, you look back and go, gosh, I screwed up. There was one play in this game where he actually got whipped so badly by Justin Houston. He actually went to like continue to help block, and it did help to free up Jacoby Brissett to go on a scramble, which I've never seen him do that before. Like when he gets beat, he's usually just like, I'm done. Like
I'm cool.
But this play, he actually continued to fight to help make it so that Jacoby Brissett maybe got out of the sack or whatever. And so he scrambled. So I had a lot of issues with him and the way he plays. I thought he could be really good coming out. The issues that he had at Alabama were that he tended to do exactly what he does, which is like if he gets beat, he has these mental lapses where it's just kind of like, how did you get beat so quickly by a guy, this Southern Miss guy, right? Like that's the type of stuff that would happen. And now the same thing types of happens to pretty much every player at the NFL level because they're all very good. So he had the talent, the raw talent. It's just he doesn't have it mentally.
When you look at it, and we looked at the game yesterday against the Ravens, Browns moved to 2-5. Now, me for myself, I just simply to say the season's over right there. However, they got Cincinnati on Monday night. If they lose that game, I think you could put a fork in any chances they're doing anything in the playoffs. I think they're holding on by a string. Do you think the season is salvageable in terms of a win-loss record? And do you actually have to start contemplating that this team might not win 5 or 6 games? They might be just a 3-4 win team this year, considering the ways they found to lose.
So when Deshaun Watson comes back for the last 6 games of the year,
yep,
they very feasibly could go 5-1 in that stretch. So they're going to play the Texans. That should be a win. They can beat the Bengals. They should be able to beat the Ravens. The Ravens are not a good team, as you saw on Sunday. Yep. It's not like they were any world beaters. They'll beat the Saints. They beat the the Commanders, and then they're at Pittsburgh the final week, and Pittsburgh's not very good. So that's like, I don't, they could go 5-1 in that stretch. You're not going to say that they should win every single game. Like that's ridiculous, but they could. But the thing is, so you get to that stretch, right? So they have 2 wins now, and they get to that, and they win 6-0, right? They'd be having 8-9 record. That actually might get them in the playoffs this year. I would have to look at that. I mean, like, what's the number? You get 7 into the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Chargers are sitting there. Chargers and the Bengals are sitting there. I think Bengals are going to win the division. The Ravens are not. So, I mean, the thing is too, the Jets are not a very good team. So, like, they're a fraud 5-2 team. They're not that good. So I would expect them to start losing a bunch of games. The Dolphins are okay, but Tua is not a very good quarterback. But I think they'll probably stay in there in that fight. Titans they're gonna win their division because that's a garbage division.
Yep.
With the Jaguars, Texans, and Colts, who are not very good. So the Browns have a shot, right? Like, I think if they can steal a win or 2 here, maybe they steal a win against the Dolphins, maybe they steal a win against the Buccaneers, because we've seen the Buccaneers not play very well. That gets them at 4 wins. Then you're sitting at a situation where you could potentially have that playoff push if you have Watson playing at coming in at a high level. So but the thing is, it's dire. It's, obviously you wanted to say, hey, we start this season 4-0. You should have started this season 4-0. And then it puts you into a position where when Deshaun Watson gets back, you're in good shape. Now it's tough. The thing is the Browns they still have a really good team. You look at their offense minus the quarterback, they're the highest graded offense in the NFL. So you combine the offensive line with the running game, the tight ends and wide receivers, they're number 1 in the NFL. And you bring in an elite level quarterback into that fold. How much better does he make those wide receivers over what they are? Obviously, Amari Cooper's been really good, and I think David Njoku's been really good this year. We've seen that, but how much more does Deshaun Watson get out of guys like David Bell and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who has been actually pretty good this year when he's needed to. But the thing that I think that's underrated about those wide receivers is that they are really good run blockers. I think that kind of gets lost in the fold with the Browns run game, but still, I think Watson gets more out of this passing unit than what the Jacoby Brissett does. And also you're talking about like just efficiency of moving the ball up and down the field on a consistent basis. Like the Browns went 3 and out like a handful of times in a row. Like, typically elite level quarterbacks don't do that. So I think that's another thing too. Like as bad as this season's been for the Browns, they've lost 4 games by a total of 9 points. Does Deshaun Watson win you those games? Probably. Like that. We're kind of nitpicking a lot of different things when it comes to the Browns. Like that's a difference of wins and losses in the NFL as an elite level quarterback. That you can only mask so much when you have a guy like Jacoby Brissett or Baker Mayfield last year where he was playing really bad. It is what it is.
Well, we got to a lot of things. We talked about the offense. In the last segment, we did a little bit of defense and some of those woes as well. John gave us some grades that really pointed out why teams are able to run the football, and also gave us some grades of on our offensive line, showing guys that have been able to come in and step up when starters go down. And sometimes veterans don't play up to their steez. They don't play up to their momentum. Talked about Jedrick Wills, and then finally, whether or not the season is over and what avenue do the Browns have to getting back into the playoffs. So for G. Bush, this is John Costco. Make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Browns. Make sure you subscribe to us on Twitter as well. And make sure you continue to download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts at. And thank you for making the Browns Locked On your first listen of every game. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Jeff will be back. Shout out to him. And as always, make sure you go Browns and continue to get better. We need
LGB
one.
On the LOB.
Yeah,
Let's go
GB.
Browns.
GB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.